Hello everyone, this is Insta here. Welcome back to my Game of Thrones Season 9 fanfiction. We are on episode 4, which I've called Dracarys. I think the longest episode up until now. It's 57 minutes. Last episode really was an afterplay of the assassination attempt on Daenerys, of course. Leading up with Missandei getting killed. So last episode, we had the funeral of Missandei. Daenerys being totally, pissed, which is understandable. Everyone tries their best to secure the city. Tyrion and Jon, they came up with some plans. Brienne has to take the city watch to just pretty much scan and clear out the city of all the possible spies and assassins. All the bannermen need to go to their castles and bring all their troops to the Red Keep, so they can make one huge stronghold that, is supposed to be impenetrable by the enemies, by all these assassins and attackers. That being said, I think it was also mentioned that the rebel army and the possible assassins, they were all in one basket. They were actually all of the same group, so that was a big reveal. Jaime warned King's Landing about that reveal. Jaime then also sent Podrick with a letter to Bronn, who lives in Highgarden at the moment, to also warn him to be cautious, possibly persuade him to come and join the fight against the rebels, but we don't know that as of yet. We have to see how that goes. And the episode also ended where Daenerys just brutally got the assassin killed by Drogon. That wasn't what was agreed upon. It was actually behind the scenes. It was agreed upon that the execution for attempted regicide is actually beheading. That's also mentioned previously, I think back in season 4, where Tyrion got his trial. That's mentioned. Of course, Daenerys, she's a dragon queen. She can do anything she wants with Drogon. At least that's what she thinks. And that is everyone. That's actually where our episode 3 ended. I think Daenerys walking off with this vengeance inside of her. Alright, I suggest we just jump right into episode 4, Dracarys. Pike. Theon arrives back at the Iron Islands and is met by his advisors. He informs them about the situation and tells them that they have to make everything ready to leave within 2 days back to King's Landing with all of their men. Some of the advisors find this a drastic action, but Theon's decision is final. He meets with his wife, Andrea, to who he also tells the news. At Storm's End, everyone is already evacuating and making themselves ready. Gendry visits Edric again and tells him about the situation. He invites him to come to King's Landing with him, which Edric accepts. In King's Landing, Jon and Daenerys lie in bed together. They have a conversation in which she can't understand why people want her dead, despite everything that she has done for the good of the people, despite the fact that the kingdoms have been thriving for the last year. Jon tries to comfort her, but it doesn't seem to work. When Daenerys starts to talk about trust issues, that she can't even depend on her own allies anymore, Jon calms her down and tells her not to become paranoid. They hug each other. Brienne and several soldiers of the City Watch patrol through the streets of King's Landing in search of the resistance fighters. One boy runs to his house when he sees this and informs his father about the patrols. The father then gathers his friends to warn them. They apparently have a whole armory in their basement and will never succeed in smuggling out the weapons without being noticed. The father tells them that the only way out is to face them, and thus they begin on planning an ambush. At Pike, Theon and Andrea have a sweet moment together in their chamber at night. They talk a bit about their past. Theon finds it difficult to talk about this, of course, and tries to tell her about the terrible things that he has done. Before he can even begin his explanation, she interrupts him by saying that whatever mistakes he has made, that those are in the past, and that he has done everything he could to make up for them, and that she's proud of him. This makes Theon slightly emotional, and the two continue their night together. At Highgarden, Bronn goes about his daily life and walks around his castle still living the good life. Later that day, he lies in bed with his lover. to who he tells adventurous tales of when he worked for the Lannisters and such. Suddenly, a servant comes in and informs him that a rider has arrived to see him. When Bronn sees that it's actually Podrick who has arrived, he immediately dresses up and meets him. They have a friendly reunion, but Podrick gets to the point pretty quick, warning Bronn about the situation and potential spies. Bronn realizes a possible threat, but isn't keen on leaving all of his wealth behind. Podrick tries to persuade him by saying that it could be fun, going to war together and such, like good old times. Bronn admits he does miss his fighting days, but eventually declines. Podrick departs back to Jaime. Bronn watches Podrick ride off, but has flashbacks of his fighting days. He has been living quietly in his castle for the past year, that he has started to miss it. After a conversation with his lover, she realizes that he indeed has the blood of a fighter and also convinces him that he should do what he's meant to do. Bronn realizes that his castle and wealth won't be going anywhere anyway, so he gets his gear, readies his horse, and rides off. He catches up with Podrick and both ride forth to Jaime. At Pike, all the weapons and equipment is being boarded on the ships. Theon is making final arrangements with his advisors and officers. Andrea is also fully packed and ready to go. Theon sends her to his flagship that is also fully ready to depart for King's Landing. Theon gives some final orders to his officers before he looks back on Pike, knowing that this is only temporarily. When he walks with some of his soldiers to his flagship, suddenly his ship blows up, and he, along with all the soldiers present, get blown away in the water. As Theon screams for Andrea, he sees a couple of other ships going up in flames. Several men in the distance jump into the water while being shot at with bows and arrows by other soldiers of Theon, yelling, "Traitor!" As Theon manages to hang onto a piece of floating wood, he realizes in horror that his own house has been infiltrated. Jon walks along the shores of King's Landing. He is visited by Tyrion, with whom he has a chat about Daenerys. Tyrion is concerned about the Queen. Jon tells Tyrion, however, that Daenerys is shaken and is starting to develop trust issues. Tyrion makes clear that it's important that she keeps on having a positive image with the people. If she continues to execute more people in gruesome ways, then she will lose much more support from the people. Jon acknowledges this, but is clearly also struggling himself. Before leaving, Tyrion tells Jon that another 10 resistance fighters have been arrested in the city. Suddenly, the bells ring, and Jon and Tyrion see the Iron Fleet approaching. Theon meets with Daenerys, Jon, Tyrion and Varys in the throne room and tells them what happened. Daenerys is angered that something like this could have happened, but now her trust issues will only get worse. Theon does have some good news, that being that they have managed to capture several of the spies. Daenerys demands to see them. As they visit the dungeons, they see all of the captured spies and resistance fighters. Upon checking them, Varys notices something and asks Tyrion if he notices the same thing. All of the prisoners are from Associ descent. They ask Theon if he has accepted any foreign people's service over the past year, to which Theon answers positively. They notice a clear pattern here, since the rebel army they are fighting, although being Westerosi, also gets a lot of Associ support. A raven is sent to the Reach to inform Jaime with this news. Jaime receives the raven and visits the prisoners of his camp again, asking if their so-called leader is Associ as well. The prisoners confirm this. At that moment, Podrick and Bronn arrive at the camp, and Jaime and Bronn have a short reunion. Jaime immediately informs him about the situation, and also about the possibility that the rebel army, the resistance fighters in King's Landing, and the spies are all part of the same group, presumably Associ-based. Since they have already infiltrated King's Landing and House Greyjoy, they should take action to put a stop to this. Jaime comes up with the idea to go to the base of the rebels and try to negotiate for peace with the leader. Bronn, Podrick, and the other commanders agree, since it's too dangerous now that there are infiltrated spies everywhere. Jaime and Bronn suggest the peace treaty to the prisoners, and they also accept. In King's Landing, Brienne is still patrolling after a successful day of capturing several resistance fighters. While patrolling, they encounter an elderly man who has had an accident with his chariot. Some soldiers of the City Watch offer to help, but as they do, suddenly the perimeter gets sealed off by several men who push debris in all of the exits. Brienne and her men are trapped when suddenly dozens of resistance fighters come storming out of the houses. Brienne orders her men to fight back and an intense fight breaks out. The soldiers of the City Watch and Brienne get cornered and picked off one by one. In the Red Keep, Drogon notices the fight going on from a distance and starts to roar, which Daenerys also notices. Brienne and her men are heavily outnumbered at this point. Brienne holds her ground but then gets stabbed in her thigh, causing her to fall on the ground. At the moment a resistance fighter wants to kill Brienne, Drogon arrives overhead with Daenerys on top, scaring nearly all of the resistance fighters away. The Unsullied, along with Jon and several others, also arrive and manage to capture and kill several men of the resistance. One resistance fighter, however, grabs a spear from inside his house and aims it at Drogon. Jon sees this happening and tries to prevent it, but he's too late, as the fighter throws a spear, which hits Drogon in the side. Drogon and Daenerys notice the fighter, however, and before anyone can do anything, Drogon burns the entire building down where the fighter was hiding, causing a huge amount of damage. All of the resistance fighters now run away as Drogon unleashes fire on them as well. Because of this, many buildings catch fire as well and numerous civilians run outside to escape the fire and chaos. Jon is amongst the chaos and fire in the streets as he sees how Daenerys and Drogon fly away to the Red Keep. Alright, that was episode 4, Dracarys. I think this was the most fast-paced episode up until now. It's definitely the episode where the most of the things happen. And also the episode where you can clearly feel that tensions are running high, that shit is getting more real every single episode. All the bannermen and lords return to their castles. Theon returns to the Iron Islands to his wife. Gendry returns to Storm's End. They're all ready to return back to King's Landing. Theon first, we are introduced to Theon's wife, Andrea. They have a very sweet moment together, but then there also happens an assassination attempt at Theon's flagship, however, and Theon, although Theon was at a safe distance when his flagship suddenly blew up, unfortunately a lot of his men, equipment, but also his wife were already on the ship when it got blown up, meaning that they're all dead pretty much. So of course now Theon also has that vengeance inside of him. Also, the big discovery of this episode is that a lot of the resistance fighters that are captured are apparently all from Associate descent. This is also linked once again with the rebel army, because the rebel army, although of course being in Westerosi, they also have a lot of associate support. And later on, it's also revealed that the leader of the rebels is Associate himself. So that was the big reveal. But now, because it's just being too dangerous with the Red Keep, and with King's Landing, the Red Keep, and also even House Greyjoy being infiltrated, Jaime and all, they decide to go for a peace treaty to go to a peace treaty. They want to, resolve this thing before any more get hurt. So they strike a deal with the prisoners that the prisoners will take them to the rebel base. So that plan is set in motion. On the other hand, you can see Daenerys still struck with grief, and of course, when a lot of her allies and even her own city has spies and assassins trying to kill her, I think it's obvious that she is starting to develop more and more trust issues. Of course, Jon and Tyrion and all, they try to prevent this. It ends actually with a very intense fight scene with Brienne and the City Watch against the resistance fighters in the streets of King's Landing during an ambush. It ends well. Brienne is wounded. She's not killed. She's just wounded in her thigh. It ends with Daenerys, of course, saving the day and scaring all of them off. But in her rage, also because one of the resistance fighters throws a spear at Drogon. I don't know, before anyone could do anything, Drogon just decided to burn the building down where that fighter was hiding, but also burn down all of the other resistance fighters who were fleeing. But as a result of that, a lot of buildings also got damaged, and a lot of civilians also got hurt. Jon was there, and the only thing he sees was Drogon burning it down, and eventually Drogon and Daenerys flying back to the Red Keep while, chaos ensues. So now we were left with this thought that was that just Drogon and this, his animal instinct, although he's an intelligent animal, of course. But was it just Drogon and his animal instincts that caused him to burn down the several buildings and to, possibly also hurt innocent civilians? Or was it actually Daenerys who ordered him to do that? So that's, kind of the dilemma, kind of the thoughts that go through our, Jon's heads, but also it's supposed to go through our heads as well. Alright guys, that was episode 4, Dracarys. I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for episode 5 tomorrow. Thank you.